Hello, everybody, and welcome to Startups Uncensored number 25. Thank you for coming out. Really what my goal today to do is combine a number of presentations and talks and trainings that I've given on how overall to be successful in the startup world. And I'm going to be pretty open and honest about our experience and our journey and where we came from. And here's what my goal is. Because I've been sitting right where you are really not long ago. And I know a lot of you are thinking that you want to start your own company, but you're not exactly sure how to do that. You're at a job that you like, or that you're kind of scared to leave, and you're wondering, okay, what do I actually do to make that jump? Some of you are in the process of working on your companies, and you're trying to figure out, how do I find a co-founder? How do I find that person to help me build out the website for me? How do I get those first set of customers? Some of you are working on a product, and you're trying to figure out, how do I get money so that I can actually support myself in this business? And others of you are here because you want to be around entrepreneurs and meet them and interface with them and be part of this community. So just a bit about DocStock. We help small businesses. We're now one of the top 500 most trafficked websites in the world. 20 million people a month come to DocStock every single month. We have almost 25 million registered members. Our content is aggregated on every major business publication. Online, Inc., Entrepreneur, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Score. And here's my promise to you, because I'm very thankful that you took some time out of your lives to come here. My goal is to not bore you and to not have you leave feeling like this was a waste of your time. And I promise you that if you give me this next hour, which you're kind of locked in already here, that I'm going to do everything I can to make your experience of building a startup, growing a company, and following the life of your dreams that much more valuable. So the first lesson strategy for success is around ideation, on ideas. And I call it the entrepreneur's dilemma. And we all have our own individual entrepreneur's dilemma, right? We each have our own personal entrepreneur dilemma. In my case, it was that coming out of grad school, I have this 82-year-old Persian Jewish father, and he's like, what is this bullshit you are doing? Nobody has made money in the internet ever. Why aren't you practicing law? You are a bum. This is bullshit. When your dad is telling you that your life's passion is bullshit, he's like, I'll give you a shit medal. I'm like, thanks, Dad. Then at some point later on, when he actually was curious, he's like, explain to me again, what is DocStock? What is it you do? And so finally, after trying to explain it to him probably 20 times, I finally just said, we're kind of like Google. We'll help people find things. So the next day, my crazy 82-year-old dad goes to Temple, and he tells everybody there, my son runs Google. So I'm literally at Coffee Bean a week later. This random old Persian man comes up to me, says, hello, Jason. You do not know me, but I was at your bris. Congratulations, I heard that you are running Google. It's very impressive. Can you get me stock for a discount price? So if you happen to be in the Beverly Hills area and you run into some elderly Persian people and you tell them that you're in tech and they're like, oh, I know the founder of Google. You do not know the founder of Google. So what is the entrepreneur's dilemma? Let's jump into the actual presentation. There is this mythology that great entrepreneurs, amazing entrepreneurs, are visionaries that see things that nobody else can. And even when other people tell them that they are crazy for their ideas, they are able to see something and materialize it and make it true when no one else can. Steve Jobs, Walt Disney. Right? Could you imagine Walt Disney in 1940 pitching the idea of Disneyland to investors? This guy that created a cartoon of a mouse, he's like, all right, so I need $1 billion to create a land of puppets named after me. You must think this guy is crazy. But these folks have this amazing vision that other people don't. Now, on the other hand, we know that most businesses that start fail. And we also know that so many of the successful businesses have completely pivoted from where they started. So for example, you look at Groupon, Twitter, they didn't start as anything what they are today. And they had the foresight and wherewithal to say, okay, I'm going to switch course here. And I know a lot of you have heard people pitch you really dumb business ideas. I mean, just mind-numbingly stupid ones. The things that just, it's hard to even with a straight face be like, oh, that's an okay, decent idea. And if you haven't heard anybody pitch those ideas, you're probably the person pitching those ideas. So how do you balance the two? How on the one hand, as entrepreneurs, when we're starting our businesses or we're growing our businesses, do we have this wherewithal and foresight to say, no, I'm going to stay attached and stubborn to this thing that I want to create, versus knowing when to pivot and go in a different direction? That is the entrepreneur's dilemma. It's to know when to stay steadfast versus to make that pivot and take feedback from people that, hey, this isn't going to work. You should change course. Too many other people are doing something like this. You're not going to be able to raise money for it. And the answer to the entrepreneur's dilemma is to stay attached to the problem we're trying to solve, but to be very flexible about the solutions in which to solve it. So even in the absolute craziest, stupid ideas that I have ever heard, what I tend to always pull out is there is this kernel of a problem that somebody's trying to solve that's an important problem. It's a problem that should be solved, hasn't been solved. There's an opportunity for it. There is a business there. That is what we need to stay attached to. But what our egos get too caught up in is, hey, here's a solution I have. I created these mocks. I hired a team. I'm doing this thing. And people tell us, no, I don't think this is going to work. And our ego won't let us listen. Our ego won't let other people tell us that we should make a course correct. What we should have an ego about is the problem we're trying to solve, because most of the time, you all are identifying great, important problems to be solved. But a lot of the times, you're coming up with dumb, shitty solutions. And I know you are, because I do. I come up with dumb, shitty solutions for important problems to solve all the time. And it's only through trial and error do I find out which solutions are right. And it's only now 6 years into this entrepreneurial journey that with a little bit more wisdom and a little bit less ego in the wrong place, I'm able to take feedback from folks and say, okay, I'm going to stay attached to what I'm trying to solve, but I'm going to try to find a problem to solve it. I'll give you an example of a debate we're having at DocStock right now internally. We just launched an amazing new version of our new subscription product. And in that product, we have a feature called Ask. And it was the brainchild of our co-founder, Alon. And the problem that he's trying to solve, that he told me is, hey, Jason, I think that if we have a touch point to our customers where they can talk to us and we can listen to them, that our product will be more valuable and people will stay on as subscribers longer. That is a really important problem to solve. I think he nailed it. We're having a debate, though, whether the execution of what we did actually solves that problem. Did we do it in the right way? Stay attached to the problem you're trying to solve, but be flexible in the solutions. How many of you right now are currently in the process of raising money for your companies? All right. I'm going to tell you how you get it done. Number 2, in 10 strategies for startups, pitching investors. There are 4 P's that make up the basics of how you always raise money. And those 4 P's are people, product, process, and passion. Let's go through each of them. People raise money by having a background of success first and foremost. There's a reason Brian Lee, the co-founder of LegalZoom and ShoeDazzle, just raised $27 million for The Honest Company. And it's because he's one of the most successful entrepreneurs in town. There's a reason why when Paige Craig, who now is the CEO and co-founder of BetterWorks, did over 50 angel investments in the last 2 years, that folks that had a track record of success, whether it was within a company or building their own thing, had a higher likelihood of getting his angel investment. Now, we can't do anything about what we have or haven't done, but the first thing that people always invest in is your team. And a lot of times we overlook this, and we overlook that you first have to sell yourself. What I know is that a lot of you are going to come up to me afterwards, you're going to talk to me about this idea you have for a product. There are investors here in the audience. We've got VCs from Excel. We've got angel investors. We've got all the local VCs here. And you're going to go up to them and you're going to immediately start talking about this idea you have, this product you have, this thing that you're doing. If you took 30 seconds to talk about your background and what you've accomplished as an entrepreneur and why what you're doing is directly applicable to what you've done, you're putting yourself in a much better position. And investors first invest in teams, not products. Number two, a lot of you are going to try to raise money on an idea. Unless you've sold a company for a lot of money, it's not happening. You want to raise money, build a product and show it to somebody. At the very least, if you don't have the money to build the product, get a designer, build out slideware, mock it up so you can click it and show somebody what it's like. I don't know any sophisticated angel investor that invests in a company that doesn't have a product already built that they can play around with. And if you talk to folks like Dave McClure at 500 Startups, he doesn't want to hear a pitch at all. He doesn't even care about your elevator pitch. You know what he'll say? Give me your computer, let me play around your product. It should speak for itself. If it doesn't, I'm not even interested. I don't want to hear it. The third thing is progress. Getting somebody to give you money is about overcoming inertia. Their inertia to write you a check. You do that by creating momentum. And you have to show there's meaningful progress. I'm going to tell each one of you exactly how you raise money right now, and there's only going to be a few of you that do it. But for those of you that do, it is a guaranteed foolproof formula to raise money for your companies, which is in advance of needing money, you have the team, you have the people, you have the product, and in advance of needing money, you go out to an investor and you tell them, look, I'm not looking for anything right now. What I want to do is I want to tell you what I'm going to get done in the next 3 months. And the things that you tell them you're going to do are meaningful and achievable and important metrics. And by God, whatever you tell them you're going to do, you're going to get more than that done in less time. And you're going to go back to them 2 months later and you're going to say, hey, remember I told you I was going to do these 3 things? Well, I did those 3 things and 1 thing extra. And they're going to look at you like, this person's someone that I can trust. I can trust that they're going to get things done. And you're going to rinse and repeat and do that cycle 2 and 3 times. And if you don't already have the relationships where the venture capitalist knows you from prior experience, a company you've been at, or angel investors that will invest in you personally because they know you and you trust you, that is the process you go through to build trust and rapport that you would otherwise have to build over a year, 5-year, 10-year relationship. And when we started DocStock, having never raised money before, I was able to raise $500,000 in 45 days. But I did that because I spent years building up relationships knowing that I'd one day want to ask these folks for money. And if you haven't done that, you have to go to people, tell them what you're going to do, and see it. And in fact, the venture capitalists that ended up investing with us, Rustic Canyon, did so because they met me when I was a student in law school, and they had just heard about me working on this and saw the multiple iterations we went through. We actually got a product launch. I built a team and a co-founder. We got selected for TechCrunch 40 and launched there. We got 500,000 visitors a month. They saw us go through 4 cycles of doing the things that we said we were going to do and the time we said we were going to do it. And the last thing that most of us overlook is passion. Passion by itself will not raise you money. But passion will be the X factor that if any one of these other variables don't by themselves get you over the bar, can help you cross it. And however passionate you are about the biggest thing in your life, you better be twice as passionate about your business when you're pitching it to investors. And when I was talking to angel investors and venture capitalists, they literally thought I was crazy. I mean, you could not have a more boring idea than sharing documents, business and professional documents. Like, there is nothing sexy about that. I am not getting laid by going to a bar and being like, hey, you know what I do for a living? I help people get business and legal documents. What's up? Never happened. Never will happen. And I would literally be in these meetings with Alon, and Alon, who's this like reserved, Israeli, and proper, and I'd be pounding on the table. We love documents. We're passionate about documents. Documents are the greatest thing ever. And they looked at us like we were crazy. Well, they looked at me like I was crazy, right? And that said, I can tell you for sure that passion about our business was the X factor that pushed it over the edge that helped us close some of those investors. And the key for you raising money are the team, the product, and your passion. Number 3, okay, at some point you're going to start building a team. And for me, there are 3 golden rules. And this is the exact speech that I have given to every single person that's been hired at DocStock, and you can ask any one of the 20, 30 of the folks that are here tonight. And I've given this exact speech word for word, which is the following. There are 3 things that we look for at DocStock, and all of them are mandatory. The first is that you're the best at what you do. And we have a standard of excellence, and it's not just important that you know that you're here with us today in this final interview and being hired because we believe that you're the best at what you do, but that the day that you come into our company, everyone that you work with is going to be the best at what they do. Number 2, no assholes. There are no assholes in DocStock whatsoever. You could call anybody in the company at 3 in the morning if you're stuck on the side of the road. You could trust them with your ATM PIN card and your social security number. Not that I suggest that you do. And there's not a single bad seed in this entire company. And the third thing is that we work harder than everybody else. If company X next to us is working 10 hours a day, we're going to work 12. If they're working 12, we're going to work 15. If they work 15 every weekday, we're going to work weekends. And those are our ethos. Those are our values. And every employee that comes into DocStock meets that standard. And what's important as you build your team, whether it's a co-founder, whether it's your first employee, whether it's even contractors, you have to have your own set of standards. And if you want, feel free to take ours, license-free, perpetual, you've got them the rest of your life. But whatever your standards are, you have to stay true to them obsessively and never make exceptions. And what happens is when we're starting out, we will sometimes doubt ourselves. And we'll say, well, I think they've got 2 of the 3 things that I really want. Or I think they've got this, but this little, have you ever, before you started to work with somebody, you just had this little voice inside your head that just very quietly told you, like, this isn't going to work out. I see dead people. I don't think this is going to work out. And you avoid it because you're like, oh, I need to get this thing done. I need to get somebody in here. People gave me money and I have to make progress. It will always come back to you. It will always come back to you. And every time that I've hired somebody, and I had that little inkling in my head that I don't know that they're going to meet our standards, but I want to get them in here, they've never lasted. And it's always been, in the long run, for the detriment as an opportunity cost for the company. And the reason why you tell the people that you're hiring that you hire the best at what they do is because there's a collective consciousness that's set, that day one everybody comes in and feels like they're the best. There's this great story from the New York school system where a principal took a group of teachers and said, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to give you a group of C students that, but we're going to tell them that they're A students. And you're such good teachers that we believe that just by telling them they're A students, you can make them exceptional. The teacher said, okay, well, I don't really think that will work, but let's go for it. And all year long, they told those students that they were the most exceptional, brightest, amazing of the entire group. And for sure, those students outperformed all the other students in the class, even though there was nothing distinguishable about them, and they were actually in the middle of the bottom of the pack. And at the end of the year, the principal had a party for the teachers, and the teachers were like, wow, this is so amazing. You know, we told these students they were great, but honestly, like, it must be because we're the best teachers that they actually did really well. And then the principal pulled the teachers aside and said, well, just so you know, you were actually the middle to lower pack of the teachers. And we just told you that you were the best. And there's something very special that happens when you set an expectation of excellence. People will want to live up to it. And if you set an expectation of excellence with excellent people, you create a company that the sum of the parts, the sum of the parts are much greater than the whole. Getting customers, putting your first big rock in. This is the kind of stuff that people are like, yeah, I know that I should be doing this, but I'm just not getting around to it. There's this really cool example they did at a Stephen Covey seminar one time. And Stephen Covey, for a group of folks, probably 4 times the size of this audience, took out a big glass jar. And he had this whole pile of rocks. And he filled up the glass jar with rocks so that none of these other big rocks could fit in. And he went to the audience and said, hey, can we fit any more rocks in? And everyone's like, no, you can't fit any more rocks. So then he pulled out this bag of granite, and he filled the granite in around the rocks. And he held up the jar, and he said, okay, what about now? Can we fill up the jar even more? And people were like, okay, I guess so. So then he pulled out this bag of sand, and he fills in the sand on top of the granite around the rocks and says, what about now? Do you think we can fill it up even more? People were like, maybe. So he takes out this huge pitcher of water and pours the water in with the sand and the granite and the rocks. And then he holds it up, and he asks the audience to say, what do you think this was all about? And someone yelled out, pretty astutely, you can always get more done in your day. You can always squeeze more out of it. He said, no. So the point of this was to show you, put your big rocks in first. Because if you don't, you're never going to be able to fit them in. And for all of us, there is one most important thing in our business. And I can't tell you for sure what that is, but in most cases, it's getting customers. And there's the Pareto principle that 20% of our efforts lead to 80% of our results. When you're working in a startup, that is not 20/80. That is 199. One thing that you should be doing right now will be leading to 99% of the success that you need to get to the next metric. And I come into work every day, and I write down on a sheet of paper, what's the one most important thing that if I got done today, this week, this month, will make the biggest difference in my company. And I tell every employee in my company, write down the one thing that if you got done today, this week, this month, will make the biggest difference in our company. And then really be honest and congruent with yourself. How much of your time do you spend working on that thing? And in most of our cases, it is very, very little. Very little. And why is it? Why is that? Why do we spend the least amount of time working on the thing that's the most important in our business? It's because it's fucking hard. It's the hard thing that takes the most effort and energy and takes the most out of us. So you know what we do? We work on a long list of shit to do. We all have these long lists of STDs. And nobody likes STDs, do they? Nobody wants STDs. So what do we want to do? We want to cross these STDs off. We wake up, you're like, I want to get rid of my STDs. STDs suck. And at the end of the day, we have this long list, either on paper or in a computer or in our head, and we've checked off all these things. I got back to my email. I posted on Twitter and Facebook. I organized my desk. I did these errands. And none of that to do makes any difference in your business whatsoever. And the most successful people are obsessed about driving customers. True story. The day that we launched DocStock, we had 40,000 people come to our website. That's not bad, right? You launch a website, 40,000 people come to it. Alon and I got in a huge freaking fight because I thought that was dog shit and that we should have got 3 times that amount. And he had just pulled like a week's worth of all-nighters to make sure the site would hold. It was amazing. He's like, we got 40,000 people, and we were yelling and screaming at each other in this little street in Beverly Hills. And he's like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. I'm like, that sucks. We could have done so much better. And for the first year of the company, I was obsessed with how to drive traffic. That is all I thought about. That is all I worked on. I was singularly focused. I was like a maniacal, insane person on how to drive traffic to DocStock. But by the end of the first year, we were already getting 2 million unique visitors a month. And a year later, we were getting 10 million unique visitors a month. And that was the scale we needed to build the business that we have today. That's profitable for over 2 years, has been growing 100% year over year. And so your one thing is most likely getting customers. And make sure that's what you spend 75% of your effort on, not 1%. So let's get more specific about this. Because for a lot of us, customers are not someone necessarily that's going to pay us. It's how do we get traffic to our product, whether that's a website or an online application, right? How do we actually get people showing up? And I created this presentation. I'm going to send a reference of a bunch of materials off. But there's a presentation I gave. There's a video around and a whole presentation on the 7 ways to get traffic on the web when you don't have to pay for paid marketing. So I'm going to send this link off. You can look at this presentation. This by itself is an hour presentation, and we're trying to loop that into 5 minutes here. But the basics of it is, let's put aside paid marketing for a second. You can buy traffic on Google. You can do affiliate marketing. You can do any traditional advertising, radio, TV. There's so many ways in which you can get traffic to your website if you pay for it these days. But at the end of the day, you can only keep that sustainable if you have a positive ROI on that spend. So you might create a web product and say, hey, I'm going to spend $50,000 to drive users to it and hope that it virally goes from there. But unless you can have a higher lifetime value than what you pay for the cost of acquisition of a user, you can't sustainably spend money to drive traffic in. And so the one thing that I think most of you overlook is how you're actually going to get people using your shit. I don't know why so many people aren't obsessed and always worried and always wondering, how are you actually going to get people to show up and use your application, your website, your product? We have had over 500 million people come to DocStock at some point, and still less than 15% of our traffic is direct type-in traffic, right? We're still hustling 6 years in to get you guys to download and rate and review free apps that don't make us any money. We think all the time about how do you drive users. And there's basically 7 ways. Let's go through them. And the value of this is that as you are launching your business, you should have a matrix of all of these. And you should be asking yourself, where can I leverage each one of these to drive usage in my case? So the first are search engines. DocStock is a classic case. There aren't 20 million people a month that type in docstock.com. There are 20 million people a month that do queries for documents that show up on sites like Bing and Google and Yahoo that then refer to us for organic traffic. And I didn't realize when we first launched DocStock that we'd be a search-based company. But after that first month of seeing 500 visits a day from search, and then 1,000 a day the next week, and then 1,500, and then 2,000, I realized, hey, this may not be linear. This may be exponential. And the more content that we get into DocStock, the more traffic we'll get. So our only metric that was important to us for the first year of DocStock was the number of documents in our library. 2, press. And there's some great press folks here. At the end of the night, I'm going to introduce the press firm that we have. But I'm telling you, when you start out and you don't have money for a PR firm, that is the most important time that you can get the very best press. And before we launched DocStock, when I hadn't done anything in tech ever, Michael Arrington himself wrote about DocStock 4 times before we launched the site. And do you know why he wrote about us? He wrote about us because I was able to build a personal relationship with him. He didn't know me from Adam. I skipped the law school final. I saw on Facebook that he was going to this party in San Francisco. I crashed the party. I went up to him and said hello. He basically told me to fuck off, which for those of you that were at our event with him, we recounted the story. And then later that night, I went to where he was having drinks, stalked him, unabashedly, totally stalked the guy, and I just bought drinks for his group of friends, and I just situated myself there, and I didn't leave until he talked to me. And I was able to build enough rapport with him that he was willing to accept the stuff I was sending and write about him. And the single best way to get journalists to pay attention to you is to follow them. Go to their posts, leave comments, retweet their blog, reach out to them and don't ask for anything. Do things to help them out. And then after 6 months, you've built up enough equity. And I'll tell you this, any person in the press would rather be talking to a founder than they would a PR person. Their best, most famous, most amazing, most wonderful PR person, they would rather talk to a founder directly. And you can build those relationships with time, even if you don't have any money. Social media, when we started, we were working on gaming sites like Dig and Reddit and StumbleUpon. That's what we focused on. I mean, I know major publishers that today are driving 1 million unique visitors from LinkedIn referrals. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time about it, but if you're one of the best examples of this was the video that just came out for Dollar Shave Club, right? This genius piece of marketing that just went completely viral. And because of that, they're blowing sales out of the water. So how are you going to leverage social media? Partnerships and deals. You can get deals done where larger companies will drive traffic to you. Find a value proposition that you provide that they don't, that they're willing to send their traffic your way. And what you have to realize is you, again, can do this off of personality. You don't have to have this big, successful, amazing company to get the big guys to pay attention to you. What you've got to do is you've got to hustle and get them to like you, because in the startup land, more than any other industry, people will work with you just because they like you. I'm currently working with folks that on a product integration that I don't think is the most important, necessary thing to DocStock, but I just like them. I like that they're a startup. I like that they're hustling, and I want to give them a shot. Now, if their product doesn't do anything for us, it won't be in there after 6 months, but I'm willing to make a bet on them because I like them. And there's no other industry like the internet industry where you can leverage your own personality and your own charisma and your own rapport to get people to do things with you. Refreshing content. If your application doesn't have refreshing content, it doesn't give people a reason to come back. So at DocStock, it's a very transactional-based experience. You go there when you need a document. That's why we complement it now with original expert videos and articles, so that hopefully in between that inflection point and needing a document, you come back for some original content. So are you creating original content that brings people back? Solve a compelling need is pretty straightforward. I'm going to skip to the last one. That's something like a dating site, something that you have to go to all the time. BetterWorks is a perfect example of this. BetterWorks is a company here in Santa Monica that signs up companies and gives them lots of perks, right? So if as an employee in one of the companies that provides those perks, you're either getting discounts on your meals or you're getting comped by your employer like we do to give you a spending account, that's a pretty compelling need. You're going to go there every day because you've got to eat every day, and if you can get discounts on the things you're going to eat in the area where you want them, that's going to bring you back to that website. The viral loop is how do you turn your users into your marketers? And the best, most classic example of this was LinkedIn in 2003. And in 2003, when I was in business school and I had 800 contacts in Outlook, and I just got on LinkedIn, I saw that there was this one user that had this little badge. It said 500 next to their name. And it said like a LinkedIn lion or something like that. It's like, ooh, I want to be that person. That's cool. And so that day, I exported 800 contacts from Outlook and sent them all a message saying, join me on my LinkedIn network. Not a lot of people knew LinkedIn then. And I guarantee you I got some meaningful percentage of those people that day to sign up LinkedIn users. And I guarantee you those people got some meaningful percentage. And I bet you from that one single action, I probably drove tens of thousands of LinkedIn users. And LinkedIn that day turned me into their world's greatest marketer. And the viral loop is how do you get it so that for every user you get, you exponentially get more users. The app that was the, excuse the pun, highlight of South by Southwest is Highlight. It's a mobile app that lets you figure out who is within a very close physical proximity is by you, that's in your Facebook graph and people with likes and interests. And when you sign up for this app, there's this in-between page that says, do you want to send this off to your contacts? And there's this little thing that says, kind of like, easy to miss, select all. And I know at least 4 people that by accident selected this, and it sent a text message to every single person in their contact book. Now, we may find that a little annoying, but I promise you that is the best viral loop in any product you could ever imagine. And the product itself is meant to only be valuable that when you share it with your friends, so it inherently has those viral loops built in. So as we're looking to build out our web applications, our websites, our mobile apps, this is the matrix that we look at. When we want to actually drive traffic, there's a checklist that we have to ask ourselves, how can we leverage every single one of these 7 ways to drive free traffic to our web application? Monetization. Here is my formula, the secret formula for making money on the web. All right? This is the secret formula for making money on the web. How do you get a lot of people to give you a little bit of money for a product or service that has no incremental cost of goods and no distribution costs? All right, so let's go back to the beginning and repeat that. How do you get a lot of people to give you a little bit of money for a product or service that has no incremental cost of goods and no distribution costs. So take a moment, we'll plug DocStock. DocStock, people pay us $20 a month. Doesn't work if we have 1,000 customers. We need millions of customers to build a big business. But it's a little bit of money. And we're trying to reach a lot of people. And once the content is either uploaded to DocStock or we create it, there is no incremental cost of goods. We have no extra cost per that unit of delivery of subscription. And in our case, there's no distribution costs. We don't have to mail anything. You don't get any packages. We don't have any inventory, right? It doesn't exist for us. That's the magic of the internet, is that you can create a business that for a little bit of money, you reach a lot of people, and there's no extra cost per goods, and it's got distribution. The most classic example of that is a movie. When people complain to me about movie prices going up $2, I always just look at them like they're crazy. And it's not because I got a lot of money. It's because I tell people, where else can you get a $200 million product for 15 freaking dollars? You get the whole thing. There's nothing else. There's no other magic. You get the entire $200 million product for $15. And you can keep it the rest of your life if you want. In many of your cases, you're getting it for free illegally, and I don't judge. Don't worry about it. So some of the other key things about monetization. If you are not raising money or you think you're going to have a difficult time raising money, then start charging right away. The mistake a lot of us make is that we build businesses that we're going to have a difficult time charging for, and we're planning to get scale and then try to monetize. That's not an option. If at some point you're not going to be able to work on it because you have to pay yourself, you damn well better start charging for your product day one. Otherwise, the entire venture will fail. If you are raising a lot of money, it gives you the opportunity to scale and then monetize. And at scale, you may be able to make much more money than if you started charging for it right away. Clearly, Facebook can make more money today for getting everybody in the world on it and advertising to everybody in the world than they could have if 2 years ago they said, all right, you've got to pay $20 a month to join Facebook. Which, if they did, they still would have made a shitload of money. But for certain types of businesses, if you get to scale, then you have a better chance to monetize. That was our case at DocStock. If we started charging day one, we never would have got to a scale where enough people uploaded documents. But even in our case, we were pretty quick to start monetizing once we reached that. Third point, try charging for everything. You are going to be so surprised about what people are actually willing to pay for and how much they are willing to pay. I don't know if you guys are going to pay $5 to come to Startups Uncensored, or 10, or 20, or 100, but I'll test it out. Now, in our case, we don't keep any of that money. We spend it on the facility, the food, on iPads, right? But until you start charging for something, you don't know what it's worth. And until you know that someone's willing to pay for your stuff, you never really know exactly what it's worth. You can make it free afterwards, but so many of us are so reticent in the internet industry to charge for everything. And we think everything should be for free. That is not sustainable. The businesses that even today are getting millions and millions of users, the day that they have to start making money and charging, a lot of them are going to fail. Start early and start charging for everything. And the last thing I'll talk to you about monetization is probably the single best advice I got from one of our investors, Matt Coffin. Matt Coffin started and sold Lower My Bills for over $350 million. And Matt was fanatical about testing lots of different things. But when he found something that started working, he stopped and he dug in. And the mistake a lot of us make is that there are opportunities for you to make a lot more money in your businesses than you currently are. And it's because in the things that are working, you aren't going deep enough. The first month that we ever made $500 in AdSense, the first month, a light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, I see the path to profitability. And it drove a lot of folks in our company crazy because within 30 days, our site had AdSense everywhere on it. Right? It went from being the site with just a document and social buttons to like AdSense here and AdSense there and ads. But what it did is it got our company to profitability. And 2 years in, we never had to be in a position where we had to raise any more money. That's a pretty good position to be in. I hope that all of you are in that position. And I was fanatical about figuring out how to make every last dime out of AdSense. And I can probably tell you now, I am probably one of the 10 best people in the world you could talk to about how to drive revenue and AdSense on your website. The day that we made our first subscription dollar, we became obsessive about it. And we spent all of 2011 running test after test after test. How do we convert more people? How do we drive more yield? How do we get more value out of them? The mistake a lot of us will make is that you actually find something that starts to work and you glance over it instead of going deep and writing that for as long and as far as you possibly can. And that's how you make monetization work. Business development. I've got this blog post called the 10 Tips for Better BD. Again, this will be in the list of resources that I send out. I'm just going to pull out a couple of the probably unintuitive ones, and the ones I think people make the biggest mistakes. The single biggest mistake that I see salespeople make is that they don't know when to shut up, which should be right at the beginning. And the mistake we all make in sales is that we talk way too much and listen way too little. And if I simply ask any of you and listen for 5 minutes what you need, what you're trying to accomplish, what are your goals, what are your challenges, I will be in such a better position to close a sale, to make a deal happen, than the schmuck that's going to walk in there and start talking about all the amazing things that they do. And it works in every context. I cannot tell you how annoyed I get when a venture capitalist comes into our office and asks for a meeting, and the first thing they do is, hey, so have you heard about our firm? And they go on to a 10-minute diatribe about their investments and their portfolio, and they did this and they did that. They don't even probably know my name. They don't know what DocStock does. And I tune out. And we all make the mistake of talking way more than listening. And the best folks at BD and the best people at closing sales are the ones that are obsessive about listening to people and their needs and their issues and their wants. And only if their product and service provides a match to that do they even ever begin talking about themselves. Another smaller point that I'll bring up is I often, in BD, will provide as little information as possible. And the reason I do that is you will be on a call, you'll get on a 20-minute call, at the end of it, someone will tell you, oh, okay, cool, send me some more information, we'll go from there. You know what that's them really saying? I don't have the time or patience for this, it's just something I'm going to say to blow you off. And you have to realize that if you're not dealing with a decision maker or someone that's bought in, to spend a lot of time sending over information or a deck or all those things is often to your detriment. And until you've really sold that person or got them hooked or interested, don't give them more information. Give them the barest bones. And if they're really interested in what you're doing, they'll ask for more. They'll want to know more. But the mistake a lot of us make is like, oh, I'm going to throw the kitchen sink at these people. And no one's even interested in the stuff that we're working on. And probably the last thing that I'll talk about just in terms of BD is in startup BD, especially when you're the little guy and you're trying to do a deal with a bigger guy, right? At DocStock, it's just kind of starting to flip. Like, it's just starting now that we feel like, okay, we're in a position of leverage. Like, we can say no. Like, lots of people are coming to us. But for the first couple years, it was constantly hustling, constantly asking people bigger and more important and more money than us to do things with us. And what happens is a lot of times those people will actually be willing to do things with you. And many of us aren't persistent enough. And I always tell people in business, you can never be too persistent. And until you get a hard no, and even sometimes afterwards, keep going after it. Right? Until you get that hard no, you keep following up with somebody. A lot of you have and are going to email me to ask to get together for coffee or for a meeting for something. I get 500 emails a day. And I get about 50 requests from people that I don't know that well or have never met asking to meet. That's one of the reasons why we do this event. It's a forum so I can meet folks. There's no way I could get back to everybody that asked me. There's no way that Paige Craig could get back to every single person that asked them for money for his companies. So do you know what I do? I just typically don't respond the first time, and I wait to see who's going to email me a second time. And then those people, I email back and I say, okay, send me an email of what you're looking for. And then if they do that, then I'm like, all right, come to the event. And then if they do that and they're like, I want to go to coffee, cool, love to. Whatever I can do to help out, I'm there. And what I do is I use that as a filter to see who's really serious about it. And a lot of us tend to think like, oh, if I reach out to somebody and they don't respond, then that means I shouldn't reach out to them anymore. That's absolutely untrue in business. In business, you keep reaching out to somebody until they give you a hard no or they're willing to meet with you. And the last part of that is when you get on the phone with somebody, when you get a deal going, it's going to sound condescending, but you have to manage that deal, even if it's somebody much bigger, much more experienced in a bigger company, like they are a kid at a summer camp. Because the fact of the matter is, we are all way too busy. And you're going to get off the phone and you'll be like, I had this great call. And if you wait for them to do something on their side, if you wait for them to take the lead, the deal will never get done. You have to literally walk somebody through, and this is literally what I do. And it sounds condescending, but towards the end of the phone call, I said, all right, first off, I never get off a phone call with a deal I want to close without saying the next phone call. I don't say, let's say the next phone call. I say, hey, let's look at our calendars. What's the next time you're available to talk? Tuesday next week? Great. Let's put it in. I'm going to call you at your office line. And I close that next appointment right then. I say, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you 3 things that I said I was going to take care of from this call. Here are the 3 things that I'm expecting from you. I'm going to send you an email with all those things. If I don't hear back from you in a day about it, is it okay if I email and follow up with you again? You get their implicit permission. No one will ever say no. Great. They won't email you in 24 hours. You email them again. Say, hey, here are all the things I need. And you handhold them through that process until that deal closes like they are a kid in a summer camp. And I don't care if it's a small fellow startup. I don't care if it's AOL. That's the way that you get BD deals done as a startup. Strategy. I have no misgivings about saying that I have a baseline disdain for anybody that puts strategy somewhere in their title. I am a VP of strategy. I'm a strategic consultant. I'm a strategic social media expert. I don't know what that means. To me, all that matters in a company are results. There's this result you identify, and you need to go after it. And most of the times, you don't need a lot of strategy to figure out what results. You need customers, you need money, you need employee engagement, you need happy customers. There are your results. I don't think you need a lot of strategy for it. What strategy is it's the best way to achieve these set of results. So for me, at least, strategy is a means to an end. It's not a philosophical end in itself. And a lot of times, you got to be careful about the advisors, the board members, the people you bring into your company, because they will be so full of hot air and talking about strategy all the time. And if strategy is not an actual approach to get to a result, for me, it's got no value. And so at DocStock, what we have done is I've created a matrix, a decision-making matrix, for which we use to make every key decision in the company. Because believe it or not, the most precious resource that you have is not money, or not customers, or not even your own intellectual capital. It's time. If all of us had an unlimited amount of time to build the businesses we're working on, we would all be billionaires. If we all had an unlimited amount of time to build our businesses, we would all be millionaires and billionaires. But we don't. So your biggest cost is your opportunity cost. In a startup, we all have a definite start point and we have a definite end point. And when we all look back on our lives and our businesses 50 years from now, we will all have had a definite, finite timeline for our business. 100% in everybody's case. We don't know what that timeline is right now, but it's finite. And what you hope is that by the time you get to the end of your timeline, you've helped a lot of people, made a lot of money, and in a lot of our cases had some kind of liquidity event that creates value for the co-founders, the shareholders, and the employees. That's what most of us are in it for. The single biggest variable that increases the likelihood of that final finite point being that positive outcome is the number of iterations you get to make along the way to that point. If the only goal of playing baseball is to hit a home run, and then you win, it's over, and you get an unlimited amount of turns at the swing, if I get 10 swings and you get 5, I am double the likelihood of hitting that home run and having that outcome. That's why working hard is so important. That's why having a team that works harder than everybody else is important, because that extra input of effort gives you more swings at the plate. The other thing that gives you more swings at the plate is being smart about strategy and not screwing up opportunity costs. So how do you make the right business decisions? There are 4 factors to factor in every decision we make at DocStock. The first is, what's its potential upside? The second is, what's its likelihood of success? The third is, what's the effort involved? And the fourth is it strategic to your core objectives? I know that a lot of you are spending time on things right now that even if they got done and they worked out, wouldn't make any difference for your business. They don't have any meaningful potential upside. There is no big upside to the things that you're working on. If you're spending 50% of your time on closing a client that if you get all done is worth $50,000 for the year, where other opportunity costs could drive 10 times, 20 times as much money, you shouldn't be spending your time there. The second situation is you get the dreamer, right? You get the people, it's like, hey, I'm going to get my product on Oprah. It's going to be huge. Yeah, if you get your product on Oprah, it'll be huge. I'll give you that. That's a big potential upside. Mazel tov. Good luck. Go with God. But what's the likelihood of success that that's going to happen? If the likelihood of success of going after these big efforts are so low, it's not an effort worth doing in the first place. And then a lot of times what we'll do is we'll say, okay, the likelihood of success here is high, the potential upside is big, but what do we all do in startups? We all miscalculate the effort involved. We always do. We're going to get our product launched in 6 months. 2 years later, we're almost there. We're really close. It's like the next week, that product's going to be out. The 2 single biggest things that we misidentify as folks running startups are the likelihood of success of an event and the effort involved. And our challenge is to sharpen our saw to get better at that, so that we know ahead of time that something doesn't have a high likelihood of success or will take a long time, so that we shouldn't go down the road for those efforts. And then finally, you have to complement each one of those with, is this decision strategic? We just had, again, the debate at DocStock today. We get 20 million unique users a month. Not all those users are small businesses, right? We have people that come for us for other reasons as well, too. We have a personal category of groups of folks. I am sure we could be doing things to make money from those groups of folks. But it's not strategic. It's not core to our mission. It's not core to what's eventually going to help us create a big company or have a liquidity event, which is to amass and help lots of small business users. So even if it had a potential upside, a high likelihood of success, and a relatively acceptable effort involved, it may not be worth it if it's not core to our strategic value. And I can tell you, any time in our company that somebody wants to start a new initiative or go down a road, I have this exact thing on my wall. I have idea paint, right? The whole wall. I've had it there for probably 6 months, and I simply point to this. And I say, can you check off each one of these criteria? And if you can, then go with it. If you can't, reevaluate and come back. And that's our decision-making matrix for every single key strategic decision that we go through. Managing your board. So we talked about raising money. The sales process does not end when you raise money. It begins. I'll repeat that. The sales process does not end when you raise money with your investors. It begins there. It's after you get somebody's money that you have to really demonstrate value. It's after you get their money that you have to over-communicate and understand that and put time and effort into that relationship. One, because those are the folks that are going to own and have preferred shares and have some rights in your company and can actually dictate, in many cases, either the decisions you're making or what's on top of your mind, or because they're the folks that are the most likely people that are going to reinvest in the next round of your company. And what I am obsessive about, is the same way that I raise money is the same way that I interact with my board members. And whatever I think that we're going to do as far as revenue for the year, I tell my board we're going to do 20% less. And here's the kicker. They know that I'm telling them that we're going to do 20% less than what we actually have for our internal team. I've got a board plan for our metrics, and I've got a team plan. And I don't tell the board what the team plan is. If they ask, I'll divulge it under waterboarding or other circumstances. But there's two separate plans. And here's the whole mashuganov in it. Right? Here's the whole stupid thing. If at the end of this event tonight, I said, you know what, we're not going to raffle away this iPad 3. We're going to raffle away an iPod instead. You guys would be pissed. You would be pissed. An iPod? That freaking sucks. No offense to our friends who run the Apple store in the back, right? But if I didn't tell you that we were going to raffle anything away, and then we gave away an iPod, you guys would be like, awesome, oh my God, I got an iPod. But you don't want to be the person that gets the iPod when you're expecting the iPad. Persuasion is all about expectations. It's only in relation to what we think that we're going to get that something has value. And so the key thing with your board is A, be transparent. There is never any issue, there is never any problem in our company that happens of any material significance that our board doesn't get an email about 24 hours within it happening. That completely, openly, and honestly describes the entire situation. And it's a simple process. Here's the problem, here's what we got ourselves into. Here's the plan of what we're going to do. Here's the timeline in which I think I can get it fixed in the resolution, and I'm going to follow up with you by this date. And by God, before that date happens, I follow up with a resolution that is the same or better than what I said was going to have happen. And I do it not only for the bad things, but for the good things. And it's a running joke every year. Oh, here Jason goes, promising what he's going to do this year and then over-delivering. But I can promise you, if we told our board, I think this year we're going to do $100 million in revenue. This is the plan we presented. We're going to do $100 million in revenue. And then we came in at $90 million, or we came in at $80 million of revenue, versus me saying, you know what, we're going to do $70 million in revenue, and then came in at 80. In one case, that 80 is an amazing, wonderful win. I'm a hero, a champion. Everybody loves DocStock. And in the other case, it's an abject failure. It's the same $80 million, but it has value in relation to the expectation you set. Tell your board, tell your investors what you're going to do, in what time, and constantly over-deliver on that promise. And you will always have a relationship that's filled with trust and value and meaning. And the last of the 10 strategies for startup success. There was a blog post I wrote, I think 3 years ago now. It's called The Unintended Consequences of Startups. I think this was me when I was 27. That was me when I was, 29. That's my family. When I started DocStock, I made a promise to myself that no matter what it took, we were going to be successful at it. And I just think a lot of people sometimes give themselves an out and make excuses and hedge and, well, if this works out, or if I raise money and if it doesn't work out, and I just couldn't imagine doing something this important that way ever. And DocStock became, at that moment, completely intertwined with my own identity. And DocStock as a company failing was the same thing as me as a human being failing. And while I think that has been one of the things that has helped have us some success, it comes with consequences. And startups are hard. And what a lot of people aren't going to tell you, past the, hey, it's a great lifestyle, and you get to make lots of money, and you work on something that you love, and you're engaged, and it's creative, and you're not working for the man. Yes, 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 yes. They don't tell you that you can gain 40 pounds in a year like I did. They don't tell you that you won't see your friends for a year, and that your friends will just stop calling you because they've given up on the fact that you're going to respond to them at all. They don't tell you that in a lot of cases, it'll be almost impossible to create a new relationship or such a strain on your existing relationship that you're by yourself for a long period of time. They don't tell you that you'll neglect your family, and in my case, every single one of my siblings was pissed off with me. And my mom was sick. My mom's basically an invalid. And I wanted to spend all this time with her and help her out, and I wasn't there with my family, and I wasn't dating, and I was horrible at health, and I didn't see my friends, and I was obsessive about DocStock. For the first 2 years of DocStock, I was in the office every day for 16 hours a day. My schedule was I got in at 10:30 a.m., and I left every day at about 2:30 to 3 a.m. I did that Monday through Friday. On Saturday, I pretty much crashed of exhaustion. I would sleep for 12 hours during the day, sometimes go out at night, most times just spend the night by myself. And then on Sunday, I would go into work for a half day. And Alon, who had a family, married and had 3 kids, was basically pretty much keeping up with my schedule. And we kept that pace for 2 years in the company. And I can't tell you that that effort is what's required of you to be successful. I can't even tell you for sure that if I had not done that we wouldn't be where we're at today. But I can tell you I had to make that commitment that I was going to do whatever it took, no matter what, to make sure that DocStock wasn't going to die this early death like every other startup. But it comes with consequences. And it's tough. And it's hard. And you don't get to run a startup and have a rich, rewarding personal life, an amazing marriage and family, and wonderful health, and getting to see all your friends. You know what you get? You get a startup and one other thing. That's the rule. I'm here to break it to you. You get a startup and one other thing. You can have a startup and be married. You can have a startup and be healthy. You can have a startup and have friends. You can have a startup and hang out with your extended family. You don't get any others. And you don't get to have balance in the now in a startup. Balance is over a prolonged period of time. We work our asses off. We make sacrifices in the now that other people aren't willing to do so that we get to have the things later on that they won't have. But it's tough, and it's hard, and there are real, tangible, physical consequences to it. And I don't like that enough times people don't tell you that it's going to be a gut-wrenching, punch you in the face, knock you down, fucking battle, day after day after fucking day. But what you do get is you get to wake up every morning telling yourself, if I could do anything today, what would I do? You get to live that dream. And like I said in the beginning, there is a sense of congruence, passion, peace of mind that you get from that I don't think anything else in your life can give you. Nothing else. And whether you're successful by making millions of dollars and having lots of people think you're the best, or whether you work your ass off and you have to start business number 2, 3, 4, 5, That is the most amazing thing that nobody can take away from you. And if you're willing to deal with these consequences and know what they are, to have that feeling, not only are you going to be so much more likely to build the business of your dreams, make millions of dollars, help lots of folks, but you're going to get to have this thing and experience this thing that I know we all want. Right? Don't you sometimes feel like you're just destined to have a different life than everybody else? That you don't want to be like every other person doing that same thing over and over. You're not. You're here. You're in the arena. You're building your businesses. And that's why I'm here to try to help you out. So thanks for joining me for the 10th hour.